Hello, welcome to another version of We Are Not the World, this time with just me. More informal that way. We'll have Sam back at some point, presumably, though I don't know where he is, but I'm sure he'll turn up. And he may well do some of these on his own as well. But for now, it's just me, and I'm going to be looking through some of my favourite films that I saw last year. So we can start with The Florida Project, which didn't come out last year. I know. But I saw it last year, and I couldn't have reviewed it last year if I didn't see it now. I really like it. Thanks for coming. It's set in a Florida project, as you might expect, just outside of Disney World, Florida. And this is a massive contrast in itself. You've got one half which is massively money earning, and the other half which is full of people who earn very little money at all. And the film is full of big contrasts like that. It's kind of seen through the eyes of, firstly, Mooney, who's the main character, who's a 6-year-old girl played amazingly well by Brooklyn Prince. And then the other half is seen through the eyes of her mother, Hayley, played by Bria Vinaita. And both of them have very different ways of seeing the world. The younger one is full of stark colours and fantastical explorations and exciting things, while the mother has a very real way of looking at the world. She's just trying to provide for her child and struggling to do so. So you have these two big things, one innocent and one absolutely not innocent, just pulling at each other all the way through the film, until eventually, towards the end, one of them just melts away in an extreme tension and then sudden release, and everything is sort of fine. Well, you definitely know it's not, but it is fine for a small amount of magical time. And next, The Giant, which was a super unexpected film, an unexpected and super film. And the plot is basically to do with Ricard, who is a disabled man with very little speech, who decides to enter the Scandinavian Pétanque Championship. And I know we've all wanted to join a Pétanque Championship in each of our individual countries, but how many of us have had the gumption to go through with it? Not many, and this is definitely the first film I've ever heard of which has the gumption to have Pétanque as the main part of it. But I consider that amazing. I really enjoyed it. I thought it was very heartfelt, with a really black humour strain going through it, dark humour that is amusing, but also you wonder whether you should be laughing at it. You definitely should, because it's funny. This film also has a main character who is disabled, which is a pretty unusual thing. He can't really speak, and this becomes an important part of the plot. He tries to say something, a certain word that no one can understand, but this word in itself becomes something that means a lot to everyone, even though on its own it has no meaning. There's actually a lot to the plot. There's a lot to do with his mother, a lot to do with his father, and various other relationships in his life. So I can't cover that all now because I'm being quick for the other reviews, but there's a lot, and you can go and see it and find out that. I'll instead cover things like the cinematography, which is really interesting because it has this kind of documentary footage style thing for most of the film. It's very standard, normal shots, and then for individual moments which are very important in the plot, it has these really primary colour type, it almost looks like an artwork. It's such high detail. Just these amazing vistas in non-natural colours, and that is such a massive contrast and really emotive in its own way. There's even actually a musical plot point, shock horror. When have you ever heard of one of those in a non-musical film? But there is. There's a folk song that his mother used to sing to him, or does sing, or might sing in the future. Not sure when the timeline works with this particular song, but because I think he was meant to be taken away from his mother at birth. But yeah, basically there's this song that has a big relevance, and it's really nice to see something like that in a film. There are definitely moments that don't go with the normal timeline in the film. It's not just me completely misunderstanding what's going on. And Leave No Trace, which is a low-key drama, but despite that it has a huge amount of emotional heft. It's mainly starring two characters. It's their story. Tom, who's a daughter of Will, played by Thomasine Harcourt Mackenzie and Ben Foster, respectively. They are living off the grid, basically as homeless people in a forest in Portland. And after years of this, they get found by the authorities and they get made to live in a house and do a job. And as you might expect, they don't take easily to this way of life, and they try and reclaim their off-the-grid existence. This film has a really unique insight into the lives of people that live away from a normal society, something I haven't really seen in films before. And it also has an eye into issues like single parenting and people with debilitating mental illness. And no matter how far it goes with these things, it never stops being a really caring portrait of each of the individual things, as well as of the two main characters, who, despite being incredibly stoic, they're played so well by Thomasine and Ben that you see so deeply into them, and you see that they have huge amounts of pent-up emotion. They don't need to convey it through what they say or how they act, but you can see that deep inside them there's love, or there's fear, or there's sadness, or any of these and many more. They're just really brilliant actors, and I think their relationship is the best thing in acting I've seen all year. The locations also have a big effect in this film. They're mainly set in forests, some greener and more comfortable, some bluer and colder, but they all have a kind of labyrinthine quality, which makes it very disorienting from scene to scene. You're never sure where one scene of forest connects to the previous or the next scene of forest, which makes it quite nice and feel like home when a settlement turns up, even if it's just a log cabin. In fact, especially if it's just a log cabin, there's a kind of question at the heart of the film, which is where civilization is too much and where nature is too much, and where the line basically between civilization and nature should be drawn. So there's something for you to ponder. Next we have The Wild Boys, which is really weird. It's about 5 teenage boy hellraisers who commit horrible, horrible crime and then get taken into the custody of a captain of a ship. And he's pretty strange. He has one breast and a noticeably large penis. And then he takes them to an even stranger island with no animals on it, but with anthropomorphic vegetation. And this is not your singing flowers from Alice in Wonderland, family-friendly anthropomorphic vegetation. This is something considerably more adult. And after a lot of decadent fun on the island, these boys, spoilers, undergo an enormous transformation that's also pretty strange. There's a lot more going on in this film. There's a lot of individual relationships between each of the characters that are gone into somewhat deeply, including the character Severin, who I haven't mentioned, not one of the boys, not the captain, yet another character, imagine that. But you can go into those yourself when you watch it. The main themes which are covered in the film are, I think, gender first and foremost, adolescence, sexual exploration, power dynamics and isolation, I think. So it's mostly shot in this kind of silvery black and white, which means that the visual nuances that you notice are textural rather than based in colour. And this adds a kind of real tactility to certain scenes in the island environment, in which various substances of questionable viscosity appear, if you know what I mean. It also is a kind of ironic statement against the complexity of the plot and characters. Really, this film is only black and white in literal colour and nothing else. The performances in this film are of rare quality because all the main 5 boys are actually played by girls, which is weird, isn't it? Why would you do that? It does make sense in the film, but I'm not going to spoil it for you. Go and see it. But everything else also is of pretty high quality. The sets are crazy looking. The costumes and the makeup and the prosthetics are all great. Actually, generally on a production design, it's all pretty awesome, pretty cool, I would say. And actually the soundtrack is great as well, which I think is my favourite soundtrack of the year. It's by Pierre Desprats, and it's a really sort of weird, hallucinatory, synth-led thing. It sort of reminds you of both Stranger Things and weird 60s Jimi Hendrix. I really enjoyed it. Finally, gloriously, the new Suspiria, which I was really worried about, and I shouldn't have been, because it's brilliant. It's not got the great reviews that I think it should have. And I understand people's reservations with various things like the slow expositional scenes, the length in general, the pretentious act structure, and the way more obvious political allegory than in the original. In the original it's there, but it's conveyed in much more subtle ways. But each of these individual quibbles is completely rubbish, and anyone who holds that the film is bad because of them should go away. When you have a world-beating cast, including Tilda Swinton 3 times, a plot that complements and yet contradicts the original films to outstanding effect, a brilliant production design team, a score by a musician of outstanding esteem and acclaim, and choreography by a very individual artist named Damien Gillet, not to mention all the other things about the film that work at an exceedingly high level, then each individual quibble really melts away in awe of the magnificent multidisciplinary structure that this film is. I personally don't like Thom Yorke's score as much as a lot of things that Thom Yorke's done, but it does add to making this film what it is. I mean, I do prefer the Goblin score in the original film, but I think that that wouldn't fit in this film the same way it does in the original film. They're very different films, is essentially what I'm saying. And this one is benefited by Thom Yorke's score, particularly in the dance scenes, where it really makes them horribly hypnotic, and they constantly increase in tension because they have this constant, unrelenting piece of music behind them. And then eventually it stops at sometimes a terrible climax, sometimes a shocking anticlimax. In fact, more often a really strange anticlimax that you weren't expecting, and that is weirdly more affecting. In fact, in the one main climax, I can't actually remember the music there because I was so crazily bowled over by what was going on. It was great. That's the last one for this video, but I'll be doing a couple more videos. One is the favourite films I saw, which are really old last year, and then another will be films I'm looking forward to in the next year. Sam will also hopefully be doing the same videos himself from his perspective. I don't know what's going on with him, but he may well be around and able to do the same. He's told me he will, and I trust him at the moment. So hopefully that will be fun. Until then, I've been Seb. I am not the world. Please don't regard me as such. And feel free to subscribe, and I'll see you soon.